Today we're going over to ESPN and talking about a piece published by Greg Wyshynski. It's a really interesting article that was actually tweeted about, and it's kind of the reason I even saw it in the first place, but today we're going over to the first overall pick in this year's NHL Entry Draft, Connor Bedard, and discussing Greg's pick for which NHL team contends the fastest with him on their roster. Now, I will leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read this article. It's a pretty good and thorough piece. Wyshynski kind of lays out all the details. It talks about Bedard, how good he is, etc., etc. And it goes over a few quotes as well from Bob McKenzie, the Bob father himself. The article opens up talking about Connor Bedard. It talks about how the draft lottery is going to be sometime in May. This is what Bob McKenzie has to say about Bedard's potential. I was just thinking to myself, and I didn't say it publicly, that we should just pump the brakes a little bit. I've learned that over the years with these phenoms, it's in fairness to them. Our society and social media and everybody wants to make everyone the biggest thing ever and hype it. Let's just be sensible a little bit here. Recognize that there's something special in these kids, but don't set the bar unsustainably high. Now, that's kind of why Wyshynski writes right away, what would help Bedard if he didn't have to be a franchise's savior right off the bat, but a star player who bolsters what is already in place? There's a difference between Bedard joining a fixer-upper, Bedard joining a gut renovation, and Bedard walking into an empty lot where they haven't even poured the concrete yet. This is why this article was made in the first place. Which teams are best positioned to make the most out of Connor Bedard in the shortest amount of time? Which teams would contend the fastest, and which teams would technically be the best fit? This is why the first overall team that is written about here, the Detroit Red Wings, comes up. And if you want to go over what Wyshynski says about Detroit, this is what he says right here. When Steve Yzerman arrived with the Lightning in 2010, he discovered a foundation that had already had two sturdy pillars over the prior two seasons. Stamkos, first overall in 2008, and Hedman, second overall in 2009. That's not to diminish the work that Yzerman did in terms of building some dynastic teams before returning to Detroit. Hitting on Kucherov, Vasilevsky, Point, and Cirelli is an impressive game of prospect battleship. It's just to say he had a heck of a head start, especially in comparison to what he was handed with the Red Wings. The major flaw in the Yzer plan has been that lack of an elite foundational center around whom to build. Dylan Larkin is great. We love Larkin, but he's 26 years old, and not, at last check, in the class of McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon, Draisaitl, or Jack Hughes. And this is an interesting point. Okay, I mean, that's fair to say. Larkin is very good, but I don't think anybody would say that he's as good as any of those guys. A franchise-changing, first overall caliber top-line center. Larkin is great, but he's not that. Greg then writes about the lack of lottery luck the Red Wings have had and how they had Raymond and all that stuff. The lottery rules were changed because of Detroit's bad luck. The current Red Wings, though, are essentially a solar system in search for a sun. Larkin is legit. Seider and Raymond have bright futures despite some sophomore year struggles. Edvinsson, Kasper, and Kosa are the next wave. And there's a good veteran supporting cast, especially goalie Ville Husso. If they land Bedard and he follows the same growth pattern as McDavid and Matthews, then 2024-2025 is the season it all comes together. Even after Seider's next contract, Yzerman will have an enormous amount of cap space in summer 2024 to shape the roster around Bedard. The Wings' young players will have matured too. The seeds are all planted in Detroit, and Bedard would be their miracle grow. Now, I just wanted to say firstly that Greg Wyshynski has such an interesting and unique writing style that this article actually took me a little bit of time to process and read. A lot of the words and the sentences don't really flow together in the ways that you would expect, so it's really interesting going out there and reading his articles. There are 5 teams in total in this piece, or not 5. Oh my goodness, I'm scrolling down. There are literally 11 teams on this article as to which teams would contend the fastest with Bedard. That's a third of the entire league. Wow, Wyshynski went out there and had his work cut out for him in this one, eh? I'll admit, though, the reason I even saw this article in the first place was because it was posted onto the ESPN Twitter account. Wyszynski ranks the teams that can make the most out of Bedard in the shortest amount of time, and then there are the top 5 teams right here: Detroit, Washington, Vancouver, Columbus, and the Anaheim Ducks. But of course, there are 6 more teams if you want to go ahead and read what Greg writes about with your potential favorite squad. If you're not a Red Wings fan, then hey, all the power to you. Again, the link is in the description. But if you wanted to go over what exactly Bedard could be like had he been selected by the Red Wings in the draft, I really like that point that was written about in the article, how Bedard would be the son of the Red Wings. Not the son like the child, but the son as in the overarching big ball of fire that everything revolves around. Connor McDavid is the heart and soul of the Edmonton Oilers. Connor McDavid has been the life and blood of that team for the past few years. Connor Bedard, taking over the reins of somebody like Dylan Larkin, for example, would have himself an absolute field day. Putting the team on his back, putting everything and everybody at his fingertips, telling them what to do. He doesn't even need to be the captain to do it, honestly. Like, we've seen this for so long out of Colorado. Nathan MacKinnon is probably going to be wearing an A for as long as Gabriel Landeskog is on that team, that having that sort of dynamic with Detroit doesn't seem like a terrible idea either. That is, of course, the Red Wings are capable of winning the lottery in the first place and getting Bedard afterwards, which, I mean, that would be a pretty good consolation prize after all the spots the Red Wings have lost out on the past few years in the draft. But just imagine the possibilities. We know how good Connor Bedard's shot is, so imagine him getting set up by a playmaker like Lucas Raymond, for example, or Dylan Larkin and Bedard having a pretty good 1-2 punch on the top power play, for example. The Red Wings are sort of on that path where, with Edvinsson in the pipeline, with Kosa developing, with all the guys that are slowly making their way onto the team, I kind of have no choice but to agree with what it is that Wyszynski goes out there and writes about when it comes to the Red Wings being the quote-unquote best fit for Bedard in terms of being able to accomplish more in the shortest amount of time. Sure, with teams like Columbus, you have Johnny Gaudreau over there, but that team is still so gosh darn bad that I don't know if a Connor Bedard is going to be able to fix that team. Anaheim, you still have a little bit of work to do. You have to wait till Olen Zellweger and some other guys really hit their stride. McTavish has been good, I'll say that. Zegras, same thing, but you still have to wait a little bit longer. In Detroit, you have guys like Raymond and Seider who have already proven themselves to being good at this level, and Edvinsson looks like he could be on that way too in the short term, that I feel like there is a lot more to be excited for, right away at least, with Detroit versus any of these other teams. And then you have other squads like San Jose, for example, where it's like, yeah, okay, these guys are just selling off a lot of their guys. They're still trying to start that rebuild, probably. And they still have Erik Karlsson under contract, too, which is going to be a pretty big crux in their financial situation. But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire Connor Bedard thing, how Detroit would be one of the better fits for him and his services. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, all your opinions about the Wings. What do you think Connor Bedard could accomplish should he make his way over to the Wings in 2023-2024? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Juraj, and bye.